Hello, friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're stepping into a pivotal moment in American history, one that didn't happen on a battlefield, but around a polished table in a quiet room across the Atlantic. It's the year 1783, and after 8 long years of war, sacrifice, and uncertainty, the United States is about to be recognized not as a rebellious colony, but as a sovereign nation. This is the story of the Treaty of Paris, the document that didn't just end a war, but gave birth to a country. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's travel back to a time when ink on parchment changed the course of history. The American Revolutionary War began in 1775 with musket fire at Lexington and Concord colonists, standing defiant against the might of the British Empire. By 1776, the Declaration of Independence boldly declared 13 colonies free and independent states. But declaring independence was one thing. Securing it was another. For years, the fledgling Continental Army, led by General George Washington, faced overwhelming odds, shortages of food, clothing, ammunition, and trained soldiers. Yet through sheer determination and crucial help from France, they held on. The turning point came in 1781 at Yorktown, Virginia. There, with French naval support blocking escape by sea and American and French troops surrounding them by land, British General Cornwallis surrendered his army. It was a stunning victory, but not yet the end. The war technically continued for 2 more years while diplomats negotiated peace. Enter the Treaty of Paris. Peace talks began in earnest in April 1782 in the elegant city of Paris, the capital of France, America's most vital ally. Representing the United States were 3 remarkable men, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay. Each brought something unique to the table. Franklin, the elder statesman, was beloved in Europe for his wit, scientific genius, and diplomatic finesse. Adams, passionate and principled, had long championed independence. Jay, sharp and cautious, had grown wary of European intentions and insisted the U.S. negotiate directly with Britain rather than relying solely on France. Their British counterpart was Richard Oswald, a Scottish merchant who had long advocated for reconciliation with the colonies. Unlike many in London, Oswald understood that trying to force the Americans back under British rule was futile. He approached the talks with pragmatism and a surprising degree of goodwill. What followed wasn't a single dramatic meeting, but months of careful negotiation, letter writing, and compromise. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If the talks failed, the war could resume. If they succeeded, a new nation would be born on the world stage. The first major breakthrough came with Britain's acknowledgement of American independence. This was non-negotiable for the Americans, and surprisingly, the British agreed relatively early. King George III may have privately fumed, but his government, weary from war and facing mounting debt, knew continuing the fight was unsustainable. But independence was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in defining the boundaries of this new nation. Here, the Americans played their hand brilliantly. They demanded and received an astonishingly generous western boundary, the Mississippi River. In 1783, this meant the United States stretched from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to what is now the middle of the United States, a vast territory encompassing present-day Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota. To the north, the border was set along the Great Lakes and through the St. Lawrence River watershed. To the south, it extended to Spanish Florida, which Britain had returned to Spain in a separate treaty. This territorial gain was revolutionary. Most newly independent nations emerged with modest borders. But thanks to the foresight of Franklin, Adams, and Jay, and Britain's desire to weaken, Spain and France, by empowering the U.S. America, secured a continent-sized foundation for future growth. Another critical issue was the treatment of loyalists, those colonists who had remained faithful to the crown. Many had lost property, been driven from their homes, or even exiled during the war. The British demanded that confiscated Loyalist property be returned and that no further persecution occur. The Americans, however, refused to make this legally binding. Instead, they agreed to recommend that state governments restore Loyalist rights and property. In practice, few states complied. Still, the inclusion of this clause helped ease British concerns and showed the Americans' willingness to appear magnanimous, even if enforcement was left deliberately vague. Fishing rights also featured prominently. For New England, the cod fisheries off Newfoundland were economic lifelines. The British initially resisted granting access, but Franklin reminded them that before the war, American fishermen had contributed significantly to Britain's maritime economy. In the end, the treaty granted U.S. fishermen the right to fish in the Grand Banks and even to dry and cure fish on the unsettled coasts of Nova Scotia and Labrador, a major concession. Finally, both sides agreed to withdraw their armies from American soil with all convenient speed. This was crucial. The British still occupied key ports like New York City, Charleston, and Savannah. Their departure would signal the true end of occupation and the beginning of self-rule. After months of drafting, redrafting, and final approvals, the Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3, 1783. The American delegates, Franklin, Adams, and Jay, put pen to paper in a Parisian townhouse, their signatures forever etching the United States into the map of nations. News traveled slowly in the 18th century. It took weeks for word to cross the Atlantic. When it finally reached America, celebrations erupted. In November, General Washington issued a proclamation announcing the cessation of hostilities. On November 25th, Evacuation Day, the last British troops sailed out of New York Harbor. As their ships disappeared over the horizon, American soldiers marched into the city, reclaiming it after 7 years of occupation. Washington himself rode in triumph, greeted by cheering crowds and tears of joy. Later, in a quiet moment at Fraunces Tavern, he bid farewell to his officers, his voice breaking as he expressed gratitude for their service. It was a deeply human moment at the close of an epic struggle, but the Treaty of Paris didn't solve everything. The new nation faced immense challenges: a weak central government under the Articles of Confederation, economic instability, unresolved tensions with Native American tribes whose lands were now claimed by the U.S., and the unresolved contradiction of slavery in a land founded on liberty. These issues would shape the decades to come. Yet, on that day in 1783, something extraordinary had happened. A group of colonies, once seen as insignificant outposts of empire, had not only won their freedom but secured international recognition as equals among nations. The Treaty of Paris was more than a peace agreement. It was a birth certificate, and its legacy echoes through time. The borders drawn in 1783 became the framework for westward expansion. The principle of sovereignty affirmed in Paris inspired revolutions worldwide. And the idea that a people could break from tyranny and build a new order based on consent, that idea became America, this enduring gift to the world. So the next time you look at a map of the eastern United States, remember, those lines weren't drawn by conquest alone, but by diplomacy, vision, and the quiet courage of men who believed in an idea called America. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through one of the most defining moments in American history. The Treaty of Paris reminds us that endings can also be beginnings, that peace, carefully crafted, can be as powerful as any battle won. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves history, and subscribe for more deep dives into the places and moments that shaped our world. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow and keeps these stories alive. Until next time, keep wondering, keep exploring, and never stop asking, what happened here? Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.